Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Life in the Red. Luke, Mullin and Amie Just as usual. Another week in the life. Sports going on as usual. Weather, everything. Travel for you.
Yes, travel for me.
which is a weekly constant usually.
Hey, no.
Bring back the segment. Where in the world is Amie Just? Bring it back. I've been calling for it. But for now, we're here. We're podcasting as usual. Wanted to talk a little bit today about the fullback. That's the big news of the week. The fullback is back.
Yes.
How about it?
I'm super excited. A fullback dive is like one of my favorite things. It's my second favorite thing, if we want to be specific, in football. So I'm very excited. I know a lot of Nebraska fans are excited, and former fullbacks. Mm-hmm. Nebraska fullbacks are excited about it as well. That's a tease for my weekender. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, look ahead to it. But we'll also be touching on a little bit about national championship just happened. Nebraska men's basketball had a pair of pretty big games, and delving into that a little bit later on. So I think, let's start off with national championship just got done a couple days ago. And I think it's kind of funny. We sat here last episode, we were talking about the best semifinals ever. The quality of football was fantastic. And all of a sudden, the largest margin of victory in a bowl game, and it's in the national championship.
So, full disclosure, I did not watch because I had a feeling it might be that ugly. So I went to the gym instead, and then I got out of the pool and looked at the halftime score, and I'm glad I did not waste my time watching that game. Like I said last week, my heart wanted TCU, and my brain was correct in Georgia winning that pretty decisively. Decisively is an understatement, I suppose. Rough, but what can you do?
Yeah, well, as someone who did watch the game, I'll share some brief thoughts for you. Honestly, it was just like the first 5 to 10 minutes. I think it was like the way the teams were playing. It was very clear. Georgia was confident. TCU was nervous, and once TCU got their first touchdown, it was like, okay, maybe they'll settle down. But Georgia just drove down the field. I mean, they scored another touchdown in 2 minutes. And then they were down 10. TCU just, things spiral out from there. You start playing fast, all sorts of things. But, the biggest thing I think was just size, athletic ability. I mean, speed. Georgia had it all. TCU, they played some fantastic
Mm-hmm.
games this year. Fought so hard to get to that point. Shouldn't take away from their year at all.
Mm-hmm.
But, Georgia just, by and far, just way better team on the field.
Yeah, and the only thing I saw afterwards was how some of the Georgia players were like, yeah, everyone thought we were going to go 7-5. No one thought that.
Right.
No one. Now, did anybody predict that they would be undefeated? Probably not. But come on, get out of here with that, man.
I think they've won 8 or 9 games every year. Kirby Smart's been there 10, 11 wins most of the time. It's like, come on, you're the defending national champions.
You're the defending national champions. You've had the best recruiting class in the last 3 years. Yep. 7-5. Get out of here with that, man. No. No.
If anybody was saying that as TCU, obviously earlier.
Yeah.
Earlier
exactly.
Year,
and TCU 7-5 would have been a fantastic achievement because they were 2-10 last year. Yeah. So. Anyway, that just irritated me.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to manufacture bulletin board material,
sure.
but that's just a lie. No one said that.
For sure. But I think, the biggest takeaway for me is Stetson Bennett. I mean, he's an all-time college football legend. Put him in the Hall of Fame, put him in all the different, Georgia Bulldog, Ring of Honor. He's forever cemented his name at that school. And I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a player who is more clutch, especially this year, showing up in those 2 semifinal and then, championship games as well. I mean, he showed up. People had some doubts on him, maybe obviously, in regards to the next level, the NFL, whatever it may be. But in college, he's going to go down, at least in my memory, as one of those top quarterbacks.
Yeah, he's had plenty of time to do it. He's what, 25?
Yep.
I mean, that's
right.
like as old as you.
That's older than me. Get me out. No, I'm kidding.
No,
Don't
no,
cut that. But as we look ahead to next year, I mean, three-peat, it's very possible.
It's possible.
The talent level there is just incredible.
Yeah, they're gonna have to replace a lot of people. But I mean, you look at Alabama, right? Like, this is a down year for them, but what they do there, what they do at all of those SEC schools, they've got an arsenal of 5 4-star talent just waiting to play. So
yeah, that was the thing when Georgia took out their starters, put in the backups in the, late in the third quarter. I mean, it was 4-star, 5-star freshmen, that are getting out there, and obviously the level of play, the quality didn't drop at all. They just kept scoring. So we got a preview kind of what Georgia will look like next year, and of course a lot of the same other names: Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, USC. Those are the early favorites, but we saw from TCU this year, teams emerge. So
there's always a dark horse. But bad news for the Big Ten, other than Michigan. Blake Corum coming back.
Indeed.
That's kind of a shock, but I mean, then again, not really. I can see both sides to it, right? Because when you're hurt, trying to get ready for the draft, like, you can't test. Like, all you can do is interviews, and they go off your past tape. And he wanted another shot, and I don't blame him.
I mean, it's interesting, too, because Michigan is losing a couple of their all Big Ten players, but J.J. McCarthy back, Corum back, and when you think about, I mean, they really missed Corum in that game against TCU. It was very, very clear. So the ceiling for that team is still incredibly high.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's a running back.
It is a running back.
Guess who lines up in the backfield with running backs sometimes? A fullback.
No, really.
It can happen. It's been a few years at Nebraska, but it's coming back, as we heard from offensive coordinator Marcus Satterfield a few days ago. Plan on implementing that as part of the pro style offense that they're running, which, it's worth noting, tight ends line up in the backfield all the time, very similar to fullback, but traditional, you think kind of like I formation, that kind of stuff. It's going to be part of the playbook.
I love it. And it helps with Nebraska saying that they're committed to the run game. I like it. They just got to figure out who that fullback is going to be.
Yeah, that is important because none on the roster.
None on the roster.
Hasn't been a position they've had.
Yeah, so. It hasn't been a position since Scott Frost was here. It wasn't super utilized with Mike Riley, though there were technically fullbacks on the roster. But it really wasn't used in its traditional sense since the first year of Mike Riley, and then under Bo as well. So will be interesting to see who takes over that role. Maybe it's a linebacker who's kind of buried in the depth chart. I've seen that before because the body type is really transferable over to that. Or if it's a running back that buried in the depth chart that wants to find a new role. I don't know.
That likes hitting people.
You know,
likes blocking.
That is a core tenet of the position. Yes, you got to hit people.
For sure. I'm going to, you mentioned linebacker. I have an early shout for Jake Applegate, Lincoln Southeast product.
Go Knights.
Outside linebacker. Great size, 6'4", I think 220 roughly. Very athletic. Saw him play at running back a little bit his senior year, catch passes. He could do it all. So I'll be interested to see, where he fits in. Maybe they want to keep him on defense. He has a great potential there too. But that's my early call for the potential fullback with that.
If that comes true, people are going to call you a witch.
Nostradamus. Come on, flip it. But, the other thing that's interesting about it too to me is how much the offense is going to run from under center, because we've seen Nebraska the last few years under Scott Frost. I mean, they were so shotgun heavy that when they'd go under center, it just looked awkward. They hadn't practiced it. Very rarely did they do that. And so with huddling, with the fullback going under center, it's a lot more traditional offense that you'd expect in the Big Ten.
I like it. There's a reason why it works.
Mm-hmm.
The spread works, sure. But, there's a reason why this works and has worked at every level of football. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you can incorporate elements of the spread into your pro-style offense. We're not taking that away. It's just maybe a little bit more balanced approach and use your playmakers where they best fit. I don't know. Maybe I'm making too much sense. I think I'm making a ton of sense, but what do I know?
No, definitely. I mean, especially just this last year in particular, I mean, the run game, several points late in the year was pretty much non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
Play calling, offensive line, those things all play a big factor, but it's easy to imagine. I mean, line somebody in that backfield up with Anthony Grant, let them be the lead blocker. I mean, that worked a lot of the time when they put a tight end back there. I mean, it's a good formula especially when you got a powerful running back behind you.
Anthony Grant is talented.
Yeah.
Let him cook. Let him shine. It's not that hard. But it is. It is that hard. But in theory, it's not that hard. You know what you have. Let it happen. Do what you have to make it happen. And that's using a fullback. So.
Certainly. So Marcus Satterfield, that was one of the things he mentioned, which, by the way, he also talked about wide receiver depth needed improving, which, wasn't necessarily a secret. But, hey, look at it just a couple of days later, Nebraska lands a transfer from Virginia, Billy Kemp. So another addition for that wide receiver room, could maybe play in the slot, fits that role pretty well. And we saw, last year, of course, Trey Palmer and Marcus Washington, come in right away as those top two wide receivers. So there's certainly precedent there for an experienced wide receiver coming in and producing right away.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be really hard to fill the void left by Trey Palmer, because he was essentially Nebraska's offense, period, last year. So whoever it is, if it's many people stepping in to fill that, they definitely need it. So I'll be interested to see what Kemp can do once he gets here.
For sure. And the other transfer news coming along the offensive line, Nebraska was looking at a pair of linemen this week trying to get their commits. Micah Mazuka, former Baylor lineman, chose Florida over Nebraska yesterday. And the other one, Stanford transfer Walter Rouse, deciding between Iowa, Oklahoma, and Nebraska. A potential tackle replacement there in Rouse, Mazuka more of a guard. So be interested to see how that plays out. Rouse will expect that decision soon. But again, Nebraska's still active, going after those guys in the transfer portal, trying to get a couple more additions. But for the most part, I think this class has been settling down, and 2024 is just around the corner as we record this, just a couple of days before they hit the road for visits already.
It's crazy. I know that's how it works, but it always feels like it goes by so fast to me.
It sure does. Yeah. There's always this view of tomorrow. It's like, hey, they're recruiting for today, but these coaches, they stay 2 steps ahead. They're always
have to.
Yeah.
And if you look at volleyball or women's basketball recruiting, that's even more absurd, because you start recruiting them so early. It's wild.
No doubt.
But you have to. That's how success happens. So. All right.
And the other thing, we also got the chance, speaking with Marcus Satterfield, defensive coordinator Tony White was also there, which, by the way, we were hoping to have kind of a full staff breakdown, talk about that. We'll have to keep pushing that off until Nebraska officially says these are the assistants. They've hired them. Still a few that we're waiting on. But Tony White, getting the chance to speak with him, you asked him, this 3-3-5, it's something that, people associate with him. He's run at his various stops, but you were like, hey, where'd it come from? And, he's grown up in it his entire coaching career.
Yeah, and it goes back even further than that, right? He played in it.
Yeah.
And so you see the familiarity, right? When it's a system that you haven't just coached in, but you've played in it too, and you've played in it almost your entire career. It's been the coaches that have hired you as an assistant, they're That's what they run. So it makes a lot of sense. Because when you're used to something, and you see how it works and the benefits of it and how it can really confuse offenses, and it's really good for allowing some flexibility to maneuver the personnel how it needs to be according to their strengths. I like it, but I wonder how difficult it is for some of these guys to learn, right? Because you remember a talking point last year, this past season, the defense was too complicated. Had to simplify things. So just thinking about that, how complicated is this for them? And is it going to be too complicated? Thankfully, there's going to be some time to figure that out.
Yeah, it's a good point about implementing something like this. And, I think White, he was really good. He was saying, somebody asked, about the roster, whatever. And he was saying, hey, I've watched some tape, but I don't really have a feel for these players yet, which is important. So I will be very, very interested. When spring rolls around, there's a lot of different players where you think versatility, they could have a couple different spots where they line up at. So spring will be very, very important for that, to test guys out in different positions, see how the 3-3-5 kind of translates, and see what they still need to work on, of course. And the guys that they're penciling in, they're like, hey, you're in this spot, man. You're good to go. That'll take place in a couple months now.
It'll be here before we're ready.
No doubt. So, yeah, I think that's the football update for now as we have it. And as we are in the off season for football, want to throw in, some different segments on here. Try not to bore all of you to death. Have some, maybe some stories, some discussion. So this week I'm throwing it out there. We've seen quite a few college football stadiums in the last few years. You have quite a great list that you've got going. But, outside of college football too, we're sports fans. We've been to a lot of places. So there's some really cool arenas and stadiums out there. So want to kick it off, say, for me, Fenway Park is the coolest one I've ever been to, which I'm a little bit impacted because it was a Red Sox-Yankees game. The atmosphere there was incredible. But the thing that really stood out to me about Fenway is because it's such an old park, like the concourses are like sunken, they're like tight. The seats are like, tiny compared to what you'd see at, modern MLB or NFL stadiums or whatever it may be. It really has that old vintage feel to it. And for me, that's just one of the coolest places I've ever been.
Let's see. I have a really eclectic stadium list.
Yeah.
Because I covered a lot of FCS football, and then I've covered the NFL, been in the SEC. So Tiger Stadium for LSU is probably my favorite.
Is that the loudest place you've been? Because they have a lot of records there.
It's really loud, but the Superdome is louder.
Gotcha.
Because it's, inside.
Indoor, yeah.
Arrowhead is really loud too, though. They're all loud. It's why I wear earplugs now. But I think one of the coolest atmospheres is Washington Grizzly Stadium. I'm, again, a team I've covered, so it's a little biased, but the stadium that Montana plays in is just phenomenal. When it's packed, and it's always packed, it's a sight to behold. So I like it.
A good view there too, right?
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
You can say it's good.
Yeah, it's good. The mountains right behind. Yeah, it's special. There's a lot of special places. Allen Fieldhouse is very special. Again, biased because I went to KU, but I'm trying to think of one that I don't have a connection to that I really, really enjoyed. And I haven't gone to many games as a fan. Like, that's just, I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
Other than the Smoothie King Center for Pelicans games, and that place is a garbage hole. I almost said an expletive there. Because it's bad. Like, so bad. But the fans are great.
Yeah. In terms of sponsored names, the Smoothie King Center, that's got a... that one sounds good to me.
Well, regardless. You know what its nickname is?
What?
The Blender.
I like it.
Yeah. It's it needs to go though, man. It's got to go. It's bad. But yeah, I haven't been to many games as a fan. I've been to Washington Grizzly as a fan. Went there in 21 as a fan, and that was my first that was my first college football game as a fan since I was in high school. Then I went to, Memorial Stadium as a fan. So all of them have been for work, and that's like a completely different...
It is, yeah.
Like what I look for in stadiums for those to be good are, press boxes that aren't on the moon and good food and all of that stuff. Not like the size of the seats, because we've got, chairs that either roll around or don't upstairs. So it's a little different perspective. I need to get out more. That's the moral of that story.
Keep on adding to that list. That's for sure. My couple honorable mentions. I've mostly been to MLB stadiums, so Coors Field in Denver and Busch Stadium in St. Louis. Both incredible views. You get to see the St. Louis skyline, of course. And the thing I really like about Coors Field is they have these like 500 level or like 600 level seats. I mean, they are far up. It is quite the experience being up there. And as you mentioned, Arrowhead Stadium, it gets loud. It's quite a great atmosphere there as well. So a couple of my favorites.
Cool. Well, yeah, you've got baseball covered, and I've got football covered.
Yep.
Though I have been to 3 MLB stadiums. Old Turner Field. I'm dating myself. And then Kauffman and Nats Park.
Nice. Yeah. I've not been to the Braves, but been to the other two. So
that's the old one. You can't really.
It wasn't that old though, right? It was only like a 20-year-old stadium when they tore it down.
They've repurposed it. I think Georgia Tech uses it now for something. I don't know, but yeah, it was a great view. And now they're out in the suburbs of Atlanta. Travesty.
Soon to be the Chicago Bears too, probably.
So sad. Like there's just something special about downtown stadiums.
Downtown stadium districts, absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe the Royals will.
Indeed, it's on the cards.
I wouldn't hate that though. It's not like I can go. Being allergic to peanuts is the worst.
I feel bad. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. It's
Little Violin.
Yes. We'll play
well.
it. But one place where they don't have peanuts is Pinnacle Bank Arena, where
they sell peanuts there, but like it's not as widespread. Like when you go to a basketball game, you don't naturally think, oh, I want like a bag of peanuts. Whereas like at baseball, you're like, oh, I want Cracker Jack and peanuts and whatever because it's 1940. But yeah, basketball's a little different. So they sell them there, but it's not as prevalent.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, you're spending a lot more time at Pinnacle Bank Arena, taking on a lot of our men's basketball reporting duties.
Not all of them, thankfully. Yes. I think I would lose my mind. But yeah, last night was gross. The game before was good. Mm-hmm. They beat Minnesota at home. Derek Walker balled out. And they just can't follow up wins with wins. Yeah. Like that's been really hard, if not impossible, for them to do during Big Ten play. Like you have to win the ones at home. The Purdue one, excusable, fine. They should have won that game, but they didn't. But if you drop a game to the then number 4 ranked team in the country, okay, fine. But Illinois, like you could have won that game. But it just, they weren't making shots.
Yeah,
and the shot selection wasn't very good because Illinois' defense was really good. It was ugly. Slow starts for both teams. It's just brutal. Nebraska showed signs of life in the second half, went on a pretty decent run there, thanks to Wilhelm. But Illinois got back in it and then just never let off the gas. It was not fun basketball.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. It was actually ugly. Did you watch it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's great to have an identity as a defensive team that'll keep you competitive. It gives you a good baseline against most teams, but when generating offense is such a big struggle, I mean, the amount of pressure that's on Greasel and Derek Walker just to put up those points. And then as we saw, obviously, when Derek's sidelined, I mean, the offense just doesn't flow the same.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't flow the same at all. And, you know, he had trouble against their big. And, like, that's a little unusual. He's not afraid of anybody, but, you know, he can go after guys who are over 7 feet tall and shoot over them and be fine. But something was just off yesterday. And it doesn't help that Nebraska lost Juwan Gary.
Yep.
He didn't play in the second half. It's a shoulder injury. As we record, we don't know the extent, if he'll miss much time, if he'll miss a lot of time, if he won't miss any time. We don't know. Hopefully it's good news, but it is on the shoulder that's been bothering him. So that's kind of scary. But hopefully we will find out some news, hopefully good news, because they need him.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, a very big part of rotation, all the different lineups that they want to play in. You know, just a guy who hustles out there, plays hard. You need that over the course of 40 minutes, definitely.
Yeah, so hopefully that's good news because they can't afford to lose anybody.
And up next is, just another top 5 matchup on the road this time at Purdue, which, dare I say, might be fairly motivated to not make it so close this time around.
Yeah, no, Purdue is they're as good as they were before, but Nebraska won't have the PBA crowd with them this time, and I think that helped a lot.
Yeah, and since PBA has been so friendly to Nebraska, it's interesting to see the schedule coming up after that. Host Ohio State at home, on the road to Penn State.
It's going to be a tough one too.
Yep, Northwestern at home, and then a couple more on the road. So, I mean, this is a dicey stretch that they're going into. That they're going to need to weather the storm a little bit and try to get to that Northwestern home game relatively unscathed, I think.
Yeah, they've got to find a way to steal one because they dropped one at home.
Yep.
Have to. If they want to be in contention for any type of postseason, whether that's the NIT or the CBI, I don't know. I've only covered good basketball, so I don't know what the other one is.
No, I think it is. I think it's CBI.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because this will be my first time ever covering a basketball team that did not win its conference. Thanks, Fighting Freds. You're ending my streak. That's okay. It was bound to end eventually.
Yeah. Well, look forward to all of Amy's tweets from these games. She'll be there or watching on TV, whatever it may be, more often than not for some of these road games over the next couple of weeks. But like I said, big stretch coming up and then more games after that. For football, recruiting, getting going. Women's basketball having some important games coming up. So we'll see next week. Maybe we'll be able to touch on the staffing, but especially we'll get an update on some of that basketball stuff, see what Nebraska does along the recruiting trail. And yeah, that's the plan as we go forward. Good luck with your travels and everything.
Thank you.
It's a crazy time right now at the airports nationwide,
Always
not
is.
just Nebraska right now. So
Joy.
yep. But anyway, appreciate all of you tuning in for Life in the Red today. Luke Mullin and Amie Just, as usual, saying, hey, thanks for listening.